Oh, it's you again. Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Evolution Reviews. Bet you all thought I'd knock this series on the head, but well, there are a lot of, fan films and short films coming up that I'm probably going to have opinions about, so the series is back. But it's not going to be regular content. I've literally given up on holding myself to regular content. I will post one of these videos whenever I feel like it, quite frankly. But anyway, this one has been a little while coming, but I wanted to take a bit more time to sort of think about it and structure my thoughts on it. I've literally just watched it, so it's all sort of quite fresh in my mind, so I'm ready to talk about it. So the film we're talking about today is The Gangster Heist. I was really excited for this film because in this community, a lot of the films that are made are fan films, so superhero films. You get a lot of Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, those sort of films, or you get Doctor Who ones, which, I'm not saying I'm above it. I did Doctor Who films as well, so, I know that it's quite a stable format, I suppose, because, you've got an established set of characters, a universe, things that you can pull from, so it's good. But original films just sort of intrigue me a bit more. So I was really interested in this one, and I was interested to see how TJchannel would handle kind of crafting these new original characters and this story. So I was really excited for this, and I was also excited to see, this is, I think, the first sort of gangster film anyone in this community has really sort of tackled, so I was really interested to see how it would go down. You can see that there is a lot of love for this genre in this film, particularly for a film like Legend, starring Tom Hardy, which I mentioned in my reaction of the trailer, that I could see a lot of similarities from the off. So yeah, I want to talk about it. So, I really only have two criticisms. Not even really criticisms, just things I felt could have been taken further. So I'm going to save those for the end because I want to kind of get through the positives, because I have a lot more good things to talk about. So let's start with what I liked. Firstly, I mentioned in both of my previous episodes of Evolution Reviews that I don't critique these things on a technical level unless I feel that it detracts from the experience. Usually, if I can kind of just ignore it, then I won't mention it in one of these reviews. Whereas in this case, it didn't even bother me slightly. I thought it was well shot. There were maybe one or two instances where I just missed a sentence, but it didn't really bug me all that much. I still heard all the important bits. I thought the special effects looked good. They, served their function, so that was all fine. The colours looked awesome, and I remember mentioning in the trailer, but I'm going to mention it again. There's a couple of shots where it sort of goes black and white, and it's just the skin tones that are still in colour. That looks awesome. I do kind of wish the main character sort of has these violent outbursts, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, but I do wish that the whole film looks normal, apart from in his violent outburst. That's when it goes black and white, and you could just see his skin tones to sort of, there'd be a visual indication of his sort of change in approach, so he stops being calm and composed, the colours change, and it's sort of like almost he's gone into rage mode, or something like that, just to kind of give that colour a sort of on-screen prompt as to the main character's anger. But, that's just what I would have done, but, it still works. I thought it was really well acted. I didn't ever, at any point in the film, think that the actors looked too young to be playing those characters. I felt that it was about right. So that was good. I think that the fact that they were kind of all dressed properly and all the props were chosen really well, which really helped sell that this was real and didn't take you out of the experience. So I think I was perfectly willing to buy into the fact that all of these people were gangsters. In terms of the writing and the dialogue, it felt so natural, which I was thrilled about, because what you sometimes get is that every single line just feels like it's pushing the story on a bit more. Whereas in this, it felt like there were moments of dialogue and conversation that didn't feel like they were actually pushing on the story. They kind of felt like just natural human interactions. And then obviously, you do get things that push on the story, but it just felt like there were these quite welcome little breaks from the focus on the story to just build up these characters and their relations that they have. So story-wise, I'm going to come onto the story again a little bit later, but the story we have, I think, is really good. I mentioned in the trailer that I was expecting that sort of the things were already going to be in motion and that the main character was going to come onto it in sort of the later stages of the planning, which was pretty much right. So obviously spoilers for the gangster heist. So the main character kind of comes onto it pretty close to the end of the planning process for this heist. They just need to get some weapons together and then they're going to go and do it. So I think that was a good approach because it's a very short film. I think it's only about 12 minutes. So you can't spend all this time showing all of the, the planning and the getting the people together and then doing the heist and all this stuff without it being longer. Now, I do think it should have been longer, and I will talk about that later, but given the fact that it's not, it's quite a short film, I think it's a very good decision to have things already be in motion by the time the main character comes onto the heist. I felt that kind of the music was chosen very well. Obviously, there clearly draws from the Legend score, but I think it was integrated quite nicely. I thought the opening scene was perfect, kind of where they're all playing. I'm going to assume it was poker. I thought that was pretty cool. And it was a nice little introduction to the characters. There are some brilliant little, just one-off little jokes that just go a long way to kind of show that these characters have a friendship. I really like that it didn't employ this tactic that a lot of films do, where they kind of, sometimes they'll constantly make reference to things that have happened in the past that we never get to see to kind of build up this idea that they're friends. Whereas this film didn't do that. It put a lot of energy into going, these people have been friends for a long time, and you can see that in the way they interact with each other. So I thought that that was played perfectly. So yeah, this is going to be quite a short review because I really liked it. So I don't really have a whole lot of things to critique, if that makes sense. I kind of just gushed over it there for a couple of minutes. So I think it's about time to come on to the critiques. Before I do get into it though, everything that we have I liked. My critiques are just kind of things that I felt could have been done to take it a bit further and just to elevate it. So don't take it as if, I thought these things were bad or that they weren't done well. That's absolutely not the case. It's just that I think these things could have been taken a bit further to just elevate the film. So let's come on to those. So like I said, two main critiques. Now the first one is to do with sort of a running character theme with the main character. So we see in the opening scene that after he wins the game of poker, he gets attacked, and obviously his immediate approach is to retaliate with violence. And we kind of see the guy in the background is trying to talk to him, but he's so tunnel-visioned on fighting, and then it gets him out of this situation, which is, great. And it also sets up this idea that he's, a little bit hot-headed, and his immediate approach to situations is violence, and I really liked that. Then later on, we see when they're getting the weapons, once he finds out that the weapons are stolen from the army, he becomes angry again, and his immediate approach is violence. Now, this time, it doesn't get him out of a situation, it gets him into a worse situation, because then his friend kind of tries to defend the guy who's selling the guns, and then there's a fight, and then they have this really interesting conversation about how they're gangsters and they don't have the luxury of having humanity. But it's his violence that gets him into this situation. So by this stage, my impression of where the film was going to go was that the main character was going to realise that his violent tendencies get him into worse situations. And so his character journey, by the end of the film, was going to be learning that there are better ways to handle these situations other than violence. So what I was hoping for was, going into it, I immediately guessed that there was going to be some sort of double cross, or that the heist was going to go wrong and that we were going to end with a standoff. So I knew that was coming. So what I was expecting was that the main character would have kind of seen from the experience he just had, where his violence got him into a worse situation. What I was expecting was that his friend was kind of going to flip out and go to the guy who they were going to steal and tell him what was going on. So that then when the main character goes to do the heist, he gets betrayed by his friend who's gone to tell the guy they're going to steal from what's going on. And then this is what I was hoping for. That the main character would have known his friend was going to betray him, so would have employed the help of someone else to get him out of this situation. Rather than relying on pure violence to get him out of the situation, he would have thought a couple of steps ahead and then would have used his intellect to get him out of the situation. And we would have seen by the end of the story that he would have learned that using his mind to actually get him out of a situation was much more beneficial than punching his way out of it. But that's kind of not the case. He's basically at the villain's mercy by the end of the film, and it is pure luck that his friend decides to come back for him and they punch their way out of the situation. Now, don't get me wrong, it works narratively, it worked fine. I wasn't annoyed by this as an ending, but just for the way I felt the story was going in terms of his violence and his inability to kind of control his anger, I was hoping for some sort... Why have you turned off? Sorry about that. So yeah, I was hoping for some sort of character payoff, because that's what you need in a story like this. You need that moment. You need a character journey. So he starts off unable to control his anger. He thinks that violence is the only way to get out of these situations. And by the end of the story, he has learnt to use his intelligence and his He's learnt to use his intelligence and his forward thinking in order to get him out of these situations. That's what I was hoping for, but it kind of didn't happen. So just, you know, perhaps in future, these kind of character journeys, because what's frustrating about it and why I felt the need to bring it up and talk about it this much is, you know, in another film, right, if there had been no ground laying for any sort of character journey, I wouldn't be this frustrated. But what's frustrating about it is there was so much potential for his character journey to end in such a satisfying way. And it might have been me. You might not have intended for his violence to have this much story importance, and I might be reaching a bit here, but the point is that I picked up on it. And so if I picked up on it, then there was a precedent for it to have an importance in the story. And so I was kind of just left a little bit disappointed when it didn't really affect his character by the end of the story. But it wasn't so annoying that I was sat there annoyed, like genuinely angry by the end of the film. It was just a little thing that I was a bit, I kind of wish they'd done that. Now, the second thing I briefly touched on, but I'm going to talk about it more here, is that I think this film just needed more time. So, like I said, I've kind of rightly predicted that our main character was going to come into the heist in sort of its final stages. But we get a scene of setup, we get a shot of the heist. The whole point of the film is called The Gangster Heist, and we get one shot of it, which is two characters shooting. I kind of wanted a bit more heist stuff in this film, and maybe just a bit more setup. And there's not a lot of time between the fight between our two main characters and then going straight into the heist. I feel like it needed a bit more time to breathe and a little bit more time for our main character to process what had happened. But everything feels like it happens really, really quickly. And we also don't get enough of the heist or the setup, which should be the bulk of this film. I honestly think it would have benefited from maybe an extra 10 minutes. And I don't want you to just stretch things out. I actually want more to it. I wanted more of the heist. I wanted more setup. Like I said, I wanted more time between the setup and the heist for things to breathe. I also wanted a little bit more after the end, once they got out of the situation. I wanted to see how our two main characters sort of resolved their problems and set those aside and kind of re-became friends, but it all just moved very quickly because it's a very short film. So I do think it would have benefited from being a bit longer. But like I said, with both of these criticisms, these are just things I felt could have been done to take it a bit further. What we got, I thought was very, very, very good. But just those two things that I mentioned there were just things that, for my own personal preference, maybe would have taken things a little bit further. So those are my thoughts. That's my review. I do, as always, hope I wasn't too harsh and, you know, didn't kind of say anything. What are you doing? Sorry, cat problems. Anyway, yeah, I hope I wasn't too harsh. I don't think I was. I think I spent more time talking about what I liked than what I didn't. And yeah, as always, I thought this was really, really good. And it's a film that doesn't necessarily go, there will be more, but if there is more, I don't think it would feel forced. I think it would actually feel quite natural to do more, or maybe go back and explore how these two characters kind of came into each other's company, or we go forwards and we explore more of what comes after. Either way, I don't mind. Or if it just ends here, if this is just its own standalone thing, I think that's perfectly fine as well. Either way, I thought this was really, really, really good. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.